My name is Jasmine Higa, and I'm going to be covering vaccinations. So as an overview, vaccines are medical substances that increase the body's immunity to certain diseases. Edward Jenner discovered the smallpox vaccine in 1796 when he injected a boy with cowpox. Some examples of vaccines include the poliovirus vaccine, the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine, the hepatitis A, B, and C vaccines, the HPV vaccine, and the yellow fever vaccine. I've also included a news video from CBS that covers a story about a mother in California who chooses not to vaccinate her children despite the CDC's recommendations to vaccinate. There's debate over whether or not vaccines should be mandatory. Here I listed the various oppositions against mandatory vaccinations. The first one is a series of social trends away from receiving vaccinations. In the 1970s and 80s, parents grew concerned about the DTP vaccine due to allegations that the vaccine caused harmful neurological conditions. In the 1990s, an infamous study was published that stated that the MMR vaccine caused bowel disease and autism. Although this study was later retracted, many parents, such as Jenny McCarthy, believe that vaccines cause autism and refuse to vaccinate their children. Many people also choose not to get vaccinated because of their religion. All but 2 states in the U.S. allow citizens to apply for religious exemptions from the few vaccinations that some establishments, such as schools and workplaces, require. These religious exemptions have led to several disease outbreaks across the country. There are also certain ethnicities who choose not to get vaccinated for various reasons. For example, several countries in Africa distrust Western countries because they believe that vaccines are part of the Western plot to infect and sterilize them. Many African Americans also distrust the U.S. government because of the government's unethical misuse of medicine during the Tuskegee syphilis study. People are also concerned over the cost of having to pay for several vaccines, many of which occur at the same time. Mandatory vaccinations can also impede on the human rights to the freedom of choice and the freedom of religion. If people are required to get vaccinations, then they no longer have the choice and may also be forced to go against their religions. Lastly, many people fear the risk of deadly allergic reactions or anaphylactic shock to vaccines. On the other side of the debate, there are several reasons to make vaccinations mandatory. If enough people within a given community receive vaccinations, then it creates the concept of herd immunity. Herd immunity, also known as community immunity, is what protects people with compromised immune systems. If about 95% of a given community is vaccinated against a certain disease, the other 5% is very likely to be protected from the same disease because nobody in that community will spread it. Vaccines are also proven to be safe and effective. Although there is some risk of anaphylactic shock, researchers have found that the likelihood of someone having a severe allergic reaction to vaccines is rare. Vaccinations are also well supported by legitimate health organizations, such as the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the Immunization Alliance. Here I included a short video from the CDC that encourages people to get the MMR vaccine. The cost of vaccinations is also relatively low, especially when compared to the cost of treatment for the diseases that vaccines prevent. For example, HPV is a virus that can cause cervical, vulvar, and vaginal cancer in females and genital cancers and warts in males. The HPV vaccine, which can prevent the development of these conditions, costs $217. On the other hand, the typical cost of treatment for cervical cancer ranges from $2,000 to $10,000. It is obviously much cheaper to get vaccinated than to risk developing a serious disease. Vaccinations are also already mandatory in several aspects of our society, such as the public school system in several states, many college campuses across the country, and the medical field, and at Disneyland theme parks where employees interact with hundreds of different people a day. But perhaps the best reason for implementing mandatory vaccinations is the possibility of eradicating several different diseases. There are several different costs and benefits related to mandatory vaccinations. The most significant costs, as I mentioned earlier, are the financial burden of having to pay for each vaccine, the small risk of anaphylactic shock, and the danger that this policy would place on the freedom of choice and the freedom of religion. On the other hand, the most significant benefits of mandatory vaccinations include protecting oneself and one's children from disease, protecting those within a community who are immunosuppressed through herd immunity, the possible financial savings of not having to pay for the treatment of these preventable diseases, the possible eradication of these diseases, and the safety and efficacy of these vaccines. It is obvious that the benefits of mandatory vaccines outweigh the costs. Mandatory vaccinations should become policy in order to improve people's health worldwide.